An estimated 60 to 80% of AI initiatives never reach production. My name is Nashawaty. I'm a practice lead and principal analyst for the AppDev practice, and I'm joined by Sam Newnam from Hammerspace. Sam, how are you doing today?
Doing great, Paul. Appreciate you having us on.
Yeah, thanks for being on the webcast, on the podcast. Why don't you introduce yourself in Hammerspace?
Yeah, so I run our AI solutions and biz dev practice here at Hammerspace, right? So basically that's all of our thoughts about how we package going to market, all of our OEM and cloud partners and strategic partners, right? When it comes to security and platforms and stuff as well. Hammerspace is a global data platform, right? That's really built for AI, right? We're excited on how it's solving people's challenges every day as they try to figure out how AI is going to work inside the enterprise.
Yeah, Sam, it's super exciting time. Super, with data, with AI. It's definitely something that every organization is thinking about. So, I'm excited when I talk to Hammerspace. You have some really cool tech and really cool things that are going on. But when I look at AI isn't failing because of the models. It's failing because of data, right? And the narrative has really been dominated by CPU model architectures, algorithm breakthroughs. But those really aren't the constraints that most enterprises are facing. The real bottlenecks are far from foundational, organizations that really can't really access or prepare or govern their data at speeds that AI demands. So the data is really where the core is the issue. So for years, hybrid, cloud expansion and multi-vendor infrastructure has left data fragmentation across silos and formats and environments, making it really difficult to unify into something that's usable for AI. So when we look at this, this is an AI problem that's on the surface. In reality, it's a data problem underneath, right? And so that fragmentation translates directly into drag. We see in our research that data scientists are forced to navigate 7 to 15 different tools just to locate, move, and prepare data. And that's often spends months on model development that before it even begins. So this is a challenge here, Sam. So I really love to get your perspective on AI ROI, what does it mean, and then why are models no longer the primary constraints, and why enterprises are over-investing in GPUs and under-investing in data readiness?
Yeah, there's a lot to unpack there, right? I know we're going to chat for 15 minutes, and we could spend 15 hours on this and barely scratch the surface. But you kind of hit a couple key points, right? And I look at it as the difference between componentry, right? The things we can buy every day, GPUs and networking and storage. I mean, that's, if anything, can get delivered with the SSD crisis right now and memory shortage, right? But the real challenge is I think people start there first, right? They're like, let me go buy this stuff because it's progress, right? But to your point, like the real value is inside data. And I think the misnomer people pick up on is they're like, well, we've got the data. We didn't have the GPUs. We didn't have the things to run the applications, but they don't realize how hard the data component is, right? I think that's a lesson learned that everybody's waking up to say, hey, I bought the factory, I bought the componentry, I can download the model, I can do all this sort of stuff, but right, it's a garbage in, garbage out problem.
Yeah, I hear you. And that makes a lot of sense. When I hear quite a bit that, AI is failing because of models, right? Everyone assumes that the bottlenecks of GPUs or the algorithms are the problem. But, reality, as we talked about, it is a data issue. And for years, we've seen that hybrid cloud adoption and multi-vendor storage has really left data scattered across silos, environments, and protocols across various areas. That makes it really incredibly difficult to unify for AI usage. So what I think when we look at that, how does that data fragmentation across hybrid and multi-cloud environments fundamentally limit organizations' ability to scale AI initiatives from your perspective? And what are you seeing at Hammerspace?
Yeah, I mean, we get a mix of clients, right? Some of them are just starting their AI journey and trying to figure it out, and they're overwhelmed, right? It's the boil the ocean problem. It's how do I take things that I've stuffed in every corner of my enterprise across an archaeological dig of different storage vendors and cloud services and SaaS apps, right? And pull this all into something workable, right? You've almost got this 26-year-old data scientist that shows up and says, hey, I need God-level access to everything, right? And any number of the teams inside the enterprise are like, whoa, that's my data. Do you have permission? And can you use it? And it becomes this whole thing of like, how does a CIO or CTO or BU owner, even start to triage, right? Petabytes of unstructured data. And to your point, the challenge is if it was all in one place, maybe that would be easier, but it is scattered everywhere, right? In non-performant locations, maybe even backup media and stuff, right? We think about how IP rich even older data can be. And so really, we see most people kind of put their head in their hands, right, in this particular scenario, because they're like, it's really easy to go start a POC or to daydream something with the first 500 or 1,000 files. Connecting to millions of files in different locations really becomes a problem that nobody thought about. Right? It's called data gravity, right? We know it's been real, but it's never presented itself in this way before. And so that's where we see this massive challenge coming. It's like everybody's like, hey, I can buy GPUs in the cloud. I can put some in my data center if there's power. But getting the data to those in a format that is, quote, ready, secure, formatted properly really becomes the barrier.
Yeah, Sam, I agree. I mean, this is really where I would say the rubber hits the road, right? This is really where you start seeing models and infrastructure kind of come into play. But enterprise data is fundamentally fragmented. You were talking about that. We were talking, we kind of hit on that point of hybrid cloud, but data complexity is slowing teams down. It's not accelerating them to get their jobs done. We were talking about this, and I made the comment earlier about data scientists often juggling 7 to 15 different tools to move prepared data, spending months before they can even start building models. This is not productive. It's not productive for organizations. So what are the real costs, in terms of time, talent, missed opportunities of data scientists spending months preparing data instead of building the models? And what are those costs do you see? How do you see that impacting your client base?
Yeah, I mean, part of this is people look for, we did traditional IT infrastructure, right? If we even think about 3-tier, right? Servers, compute, storage, and networking, right? It was always how do you get those 3 teams to work together. And so now we see this new set of teams, right? It's the data scientists, it's the traditional infrastructure guys, and it's really the security teams, right? Now we're meshing more together. And so we find people are, we used to look at that in an ROI of 3 to 5 years, right? I can give you my big spreadsheet and do calculations. Now people are looking at 3 to 5 months, right? They're in this like AI or die kind of mentality. If I can't become competitive, if I can't figure out how to meet my competition, right? As they're improving processes or launching new tools, like you can slip behind quickly. And so the ROI factor is today, not tomorrow, right? Is how quickly can I do this stuff? And the challenge, right, when you're combing through thousands of files, looking at permissions, trying to do all this stuff, there's an immense amount of pressure sitting on those data scientists, right? And sometimes like they are literally drinking coffee while they're waiting for, an rsync, some archaic method of moving files between one storage system to another to happen, let alone thinking about sifting through that data, right? What's usable, what's not, how do you assign value to those particular things? And so we see people get into this almost death spiral, right? This endless swirl of, well, what data is good enough? How do I try this next data set? Oh, I didn't collect it from that branch location or that manufacturing plant or R&D. And they're all of a sudden trying to figure out how do they mash all this together? And so what we find is people get in this thing of, the executive leadership had it in their 10K, right? We're going to go release this new app or we're adding functionality. Because, if you're not, who's going to invest in your company and buy your stock? But then there's this, other piece of like, how do you actually deliver an outcome? Like, what does that outcome look like? Is it, the cultural adoption of the app? Is it you improve the process by 7% efficiency? Like, there's all sorts of new metrics people are trying to find. So I would argue, as much as it's ROI and stuff, people are still trying to determine what success is, but they know that the limiting factor, right, is the data that they've put in their organization for the past 10 years.
Yes, I mean, absolutely. But I also think that there is the factor of complexity and skill gap is a big challenge for organizations. We see in our own research that 67% of organizations are hiring generalists over specialists. So there is a barrier there. Can you talk a little bit about how to overcome that barrier? Like where there's this archaic way of moving data, as you were talking about. But like, what does that mean to like a modern environment?
Well, I mean, this is really where even the reason I joined Hammerspace, right, is how do we take all of those tools, right? To your point, a traditional storage admin doesn't understand Helm charts and Kubernetes and NV ingest and all the stuff it takes to even move data through a pipeline to make it AI ready, right? It's like they're looking at scripts and they're Googling and they're hoping that, Gemini or Claude or something's giving them the right next step of code to copy and paste. And so part of the whole challenge was, let's make this intelligent, right? We can, back to the GI Joe thing we talked about earlier. It's like knowing's half the battle, right? So we can discover and see all of that data, and let's call it a single namespace, right? That helps us. And then as we understand that data, its value, its weight, its classification, can you use that data in both private or public settings for AI? And then the ability to orchestrate all of that data, right? To be able to intelligently move that with policy, with security. Everyone's big fear, right, is like, hey, if I copy files from where they're born, right, they lose their inherency. It's like feathers scattered into the wind. And so part of what our platform does, right, is really allow that storage admin to become an AI expert without learning the messy middle, right? It's about how do I obscure that stuff? How do I create a true platform, right, that isn't a bunch of Legos you lay out on the table, but something that you can literally say, I'm going to aim this at hybrid enterprise data, let it do all the heavy lifting, right, all the pieces that have created that swirl we just talked about, and land it in a vector database that you can connect an LLM to. We can download any number of LLMs today, right? To your point, the models aren't the challenge. They're out there, like pick the one you want, right? But it's really about, as we see enterprises adopting these RAG models or fine-tuning these models, right? It's really about how did I get that intelligent data through that process? And that's where people don't want to wait, right? That's where we want to make that messy middle part just disappear. And so when you think about all the tools and all the things they touch, right, it really should be, what if I can make it next finish? And that's our goal here. So.
Yeah, and that reduces the complexity, right? That gets rid of the friction, that gets rid of, but the other thing that we have to also take into consideration is the way these heritage environments were built, the security of that data, the integrity of the data, the governance, all was built within these silos. They were built within these monolithic systems. And then when we extract out that data, those properties need to go with that data. So I'm curious what your take is here. We see that roughly 60 to 80% of projects never really make it to deployment. And these AI initiatives fail before they reach production, not because the models don't work, but because the data isn't ready or connected or governed properly, right? So I'm curious what your take is there, because, like, again, you have these heritage environments. Those are systems of record. A lot of organizations are just encapsulating them, leaving them alone. What are your thoughts?
Yeah, I mean, I think that's really the challenge to solve. We almost see three profiles of people, right? It's IT and storage that have managed those heritage systems forever, right? Those are the system of records. And to your point, like, it's almost that, like, how many keys do you need to get into them? Then you've got the AI and BU, right? The people who are trying to extract the value from that data. And really why we see a lot of failures, the security teams, right? And not to give them the bad rap, their job is to protect the organization from risk. And they're like, what data did you use? Where did it come from? How do I know there's not something tied to intellectual property or personal identifying information in those things? And so really the idea of having a platform that does this stuff, right, is the ability for us to say, hey, let's get all those three teams to work together, right? We talked about the traditional three-tier model. Now we're getting the security teams, the BUs, the data scientists, and those traditional IT heritage systems to all work together, right? You can see flow from start to finish. And to your point, what we've done is had a vision of, like, metadata is king, right? So part of that's the file metadata. It's all the stuff that's about performance and geographical location. It's about, role-based access and who has permissions and all the things that we understood in a traditional file system. But when you mesh that with the contextual metadata, right, with all the security primitives and who can or can't see it, now as you think about moving, we always thought about things in terms of, like, boxes and shares, right? And data scientists see it in terms of, like, groups of files. Well, now if I could take that bill of material, right, that set of files, and move that anywhere I need to run AI, and it continue to inherit its performance, its security, its primitives, like, that's what people are looking for. That's what reduces the risk that slams the door shut on most of these AI initiatives ever going into production.
Yeah, absolutely. And when we look at it, there's a lot of times people will look at these barriers for AI. It's the ROI is for data readiness, not the investment, right? So, like, when you look at the data and you have it all kind of ready for the AI initiative, that's the big challenge that many organizations don't think about. They're building these front end applications. They're building these systems of engagement to access, systems of record, but they're not preparing the data. So I agree with you. I also want to touch on the fact that you mentioned about the alignment of the pipelines. There's definitely across the SDLC and the CI/CD pipeline, we're seeing telemetry pipelines, security pipelines, all converging on to that CI/CD, delivery model because the acceleration of applications being delivered is increasing dramatically. And by having that acceleration of applications increase dramatically, this means that the process can't be siloed and slowed down. I cover day 0, day 1, day 2 in DevSecOps and AppSec, which, from an analyst perspective, that's a real world scenario from what businesses are doing. Organizations don't typically look at each one of those silos independently. Right. They look at it as a flow. So what do you see as the real barrier for AI ROI with data readiness? What is the challenge that you see?
Yeah, I mean, sometimes pick your enterprise, right? But the reality is that I think it comes in 2 forms, right? There's this fear of the upfront capital, right? Is that people are having to make this massive investment in GPUs and storage and new infrastructure to hope they get an outcome, right? Like I heard somebody that they made mention of the pick and pray mentality, right? We're going to go pick this data set and kind of pray that it gives us the outcome we want. And so what we're trying to do is make this more manageable, right? It doesn't have to be a boil the ocean problem. I think the way you're going to see enterprises really start to see ROI is going back into our roots of app development, right? We would always start small, create some beta users, do some things. And that's, to us, that's project-based AI, right? That's, hey, I'm going to go start here. I can't solve this for the enterprise in one fell swoop. I'm going to start with a department, a outcome, right? Start figuring that out. And then, hopefully they've landed on a platform, maybe like ours, right? That allows them to scale, right? That they don't have to re-platform and then move that from some cloud-based initiative into something on-prem and those types of things, but that they're investing in things up front, right? To me, the unlock to that is if you think about data readiness first, if you think about what you're trying to do, the rest of the stuff is out there, right? And I'm not trying to downplay the complexity of inference farms and models and that type of stuff, but they have become a little bit commodity, right? It's like pick your GPU size, pick your neo cloud, pick your hyperscaler. Like that infrastructure is there. The real challenge comes to what data, what do I need to use, what is it informing, and really about enterprises learning to measure the outcome of those particular things. And that's the challenge, right? Is we've been in this journey for years now. Pick whoever says they started AI first. But the reality is it's not, you talked about the skills gap. It's not like you can just hire the right firm that's like, here's the implementation. We can do this with ERP systems and databases and stuff. AI still has a lot of fringe attached to it. Is what's valuable to company A may not be valuable to company B. And the best way you figure that out, or, truthfully, we talked about this last time too. It's like, what even was valuable 2 weeks ago may not be as valuable now at the rate things are changing. And so it's all about picking platforms and infrastructure that allows you to scale, be dynamic, twist, right? So that ROI can shift from week 1 to week 4 as you learn more.
Oh, for sure. When you were talking, I was thinking we could go another 2 hours talking about vibe coding and what that means, the impacts of vibe coding on this. But, hey, I know we're coming to the close here. Well, I'm going to give you the final word to the audience. What do you want to leave the audience to know? We talked about a lot. There's a lot to unpack. You mentioned it as well that your clients are, in various stages of their maturity. What would you advise the audience by watching this episode here?
Yeah, part of it, I want to put a little bit of a shameless plug, right? Like think about AI data platforms, right? You can buy storage, you can buy, all the pieces, but you still have to build it. You still run into the talent gap. You still learn stuff. What we're trying to do is build a platform that really makes it easy for people from every walk of life, whether you're a data scientist, whether you're that storage engineer, whether you're the BU operator looking for some sort of outcome, right? And not this long legacy of a Gantt chart that makes your eyes go crossed, right? It's about how quickly can you get value from your data, monetizing that data as quickly as possible. And that's all going to happen through something like Hammerspace's AI data platform.
Sam, very insightful. I mean, a lot of this conversation, it's going to help the audience understand how to get started in their own journey. So thank you for your insights, and thank you for being on my guest on the show today. A big thank you to all of you who've tuned in. We appreciate you being part of the AppDevANGLE community. But for now, that wraps up this episode. But we'll be back next Wednesday with another conversation diving into the tools, trends, and talent shaping the future of application development. So whether you're deploying at the edge, building with AI, or modernizing your cloud stack, we've got you covered. Be sure to follow us on social if you have any thoughts, questions, or just want to connect. Until next time, stay curious and stay building.